And we are live. Welcome everybody to Angular Mountain View. So excited to have y'all here. I see some people posting in the comments, so definitely log in, come hang out with us, ask questions. There's some amazing talks today. Minko, who is the host of Angular Mountain View, couldn't be here today, but I'm Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeet. I co-host Modern Web and also GDG. So those of you who are here for GDG and Modern Web, welcome. But we're so excited to do this. I mean, I feel like I miss our Mountain View meetups. Mark has never experienced them, but Ben, you miss them, right?
I do. I like them.
I know, it was so great. And Google would always buy us food. Thank you, Angular team. Angular would always hook us up with delicious food.
If they want to send me food, I can give them my home address.
Yeah?
I still accept free food.
All right. Well, you should post your home address in the comments, and then either everybody on the internet is going to send you free food or come live in your basement. I mean, Either way, it's a gamble.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Nothing much. So anyways, today we have a really special meetup. We have, Mark, who's on the Angular core team. He's going to give us some updates on Angular. They're going to be amazing. So I've set the precedent there. And then we have Ben, and Ben is going to be giving an amazing talk on just updates to RxJS. There's been a lot going on. So, that'll be fun as well. We super are thankful that you all are joining us for your lunch break. And also for those of you who aren't in Mountain View, thank you so much for joining us as well. And last but not least, I'll be giving a talk on open source and tips on contributing to open source. So thank you again for being here. Again, join the comments, come hang out with us, post where you're from, post all the fun questions you have, and we'll try to get to them. And Mark, you're first. So you ready? And it's better to have Mark go first because he brings this energy and we're just going to ride it. So
that sounds like a plan to me. I am super pumped up. So just going to let you know right now, I am super pumped up. This is about to be a straight up party.
Wait, okay, hold on, friends. Mark. Hold on.
Oh, that's right. You can't tell them about this yet. They don't know about that. That's okay. Well, that's coming though. That is on the way. All right, friends, this is so exciting. So first off, I'm a huge fan of the company that I am keeping. Ben Lesh is here. We got Tracy. Tracy is the only reason I'm as cool as I am because she literally tweeted out this list of incredible women in technology that people should follow. Because of that list, I met some amazing people who actually helped me get to where I am today. So without that happening, this whole moment probably doesn't happen. So I am super duper thrilled to be here. So thank you, friends, for coming to hang out. Before I can even do anything, I need you to do something for me. I need you to put a thumbs up emoji in the chat. I can't start until I see some thumbs ups because I need to see the people in the building. So go ahead and start putting those down in there and we're going to get this thing started. And as you're typing your thumbs up, let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Thompson. You can find me online at Mark Texan. My pronouns are he, him. And yeah, I work at Google and I'm on the Angular team. And today we're going to talk about the state of Angular. All right, I see the thumbs up in the chat so we can get this party started. So we all love Angular, but let's make sure that we're on the same page in where the Angular core team values are. So for us, here's what's really important is that we provide a platform, so tooling that gives developers this ability to build apps that they really love the building experience and they're loving the Angular experience there. Next, we want to make sure that developers can build apps that their users love to use. And finally, and this is the thing that I am it's very close to my heart. And because of moments like this, it's a community where everyone, not just the top performers, not just the main contributors, but everyone, people who want to write code in Angular, they want to learn that they all feel welcomed. That's really interesting to me. And I'll tell you why that's so important. When I first joined the Angular team, I felt this incredible energy. And it was the energy of the Angular community. Because I felt like people inside of Google wanted me to succeed, but I felt like the community wanted me to succeed as a part of the team, and they embraced me with open arms. And what was really interesting is I started to think about, well, what does this look like for other people in the community? And I was really surprised to see that, yeah, you folks are phenomenal. You are an incredible community, and I am so glad to be here. So let's actually talk a little bit about the things of the Angular community. So I want to call out this person, Eric Slack. All right, and he's a part of the team that leads the Angular meetup. And what's really cool about Eric is that he's always looking for fresh and diverse talent to speak at the meetups. And it is this open secret that if you're not ready for your presentation, like you don't know what to do or what to talk about, he's going to help you out. And that's because he loves Angular and the Angular community. Then we have somebody like James Henry, who spent months and months of his time working on Angular, ESLint, and the other contributors there. But it's because the Angular community didn't have a linting solution after TSLint went into deprecation. And so James Henry just started working on this project. Why? That's a labor of love, because I have worked on hobby projects before. And I don't finish half the stuff that I start. I can't even say half. I don't finish most of the projects that I start. So to see someone spend their time working on something for so long to help others is really incredible, but another sign of the Angular community. Then we look at someone like Sander, Elias, and Frosty, and that whole team at Scully.io. There was no real solution for static site generation to be able to still use those Angular skills and leverage those hard-earned skills. So guess what? This team, they ended up making Scully, and you can just use it and build static sites. A really huge effort, fueled by passion for the community and passion for Angular. And then our very own, now this is not pandering, I'm being honest, Tracy Lee and the team at this.labs. Why is Tracy so fantastic, right? They do so much for the Angular community. They host trainings, they host meetups, like she's hosting today, right? Like just making sure that this thing can happen. The Angular World Tour is coming from Tracy and the team. Do you see where I'm going here? Do you see how someone who could be passionate about the community, passionate about Angular, the heights that they go, and all of the effort that they put in? So how could I not be excited to be a part of this? How could you not be excited to be a part of this? And these are just 4 people that I'm calling out, right? There are so many other people doing really great things. So I don't want you to feel like I don't care about your contributions or that they're not important, because you are important and you are absolutely fantastic. And because you're so fantastic, I got something for you. I need you to get that left hand up right where you are. You see that? Here's mine. That's a high five from me to you, because you're doing so great. All right, friends. Now I've gushed and gushed about, the Angular community. Let's give some updates. So what about Angular inside Google? Well, there's a lot going on there. So we have thousands of people writing Angular code internally at Google, and some of your favorite projects use Angular actually. So if you look at something like Firebase or Google Cloud Platform ads, like these tools use Angular. So Angular is alive and thriving with the internal Angular community here at Google. And then because of the demand for these skills internally, we train about 1,000 engineers a year on using Angular with our internal resources. So the Angular community at Google is thriving, and they're having a really good time, and they're cranking out some really amazing projects. But you're probably thinking, well, Mark, that's just at Google. What about the rest of us? Well, I have some answers for you around that as well. Let's talk about adoption in the community. Well, on a recent count that we did, we saw that the weekly downloads went from about 1.4 million to around 2.6 million downloads. Now, this is weekly downloads, and it doesn't count anyone who's using a different repository system to get their Angular. And it also doesn't count people who are using Angular maybe behind a private NPM distribution, something like that. So we don't count that. But from what we can count from the public, this is the data that we've seen recently. And then on GitHub, it's being used by over 1.8 million GitHub projects. So a lot of people are out there building Angular stuff and really doing some great work. But be mindful that this is not counting private repositories. This isn't counting people who use something like GitLab or Bitbucket or some other source control, or even private, right? So, but this is from the public data that we could get, and this is pretty pretty impressive. I'm really excited to see that so many people are having such a good time. Now, let's talk about how the community is getting involved with Angular. Recently, we saw some really cool features land, and because we build Angular right in public with you, right? So you folks help drive the future of Angular with your contributions. Recently, we saw some updates around using ng zone and it not throwing navigation-related warnings unnecessarily. Updates to HTTP client in the way that you can specify request metadata. Min and max form validators being added to the party. Then support for app initializer working with observables. Again, there are lots and lots of contributions that made it, but I thought these would be really cool to highlight. So if you're seeing what I'm talking about with the contributions and you're really interested in how can you be a part of the party, well, let's talk through a few ways that you can do that. So first, you can submit PRs because, as I mentioned, we built this thing right in public with you folks. So you can write some code, submit some PRs, and then if they are a good fit, we get to accept them and integrate them into this platform. Another way, though, let's say maybe you don't have time to write extra pull requests, which is totally reasonable. Hopefully, you could find some space to participate in the RFCs and responding to our surveys. RFCs are things like requests for comments. And when we were looking at the lifetime of IE11, what's going to happen next before we deprecated it, we put out an RFC to get your feedback. And we read these and we listen and we do the best that we can to support as many developers as we can with the outcomes. You can also do this thing, which is really cool, is feature requests. Now, let's talk about that. A lot of y'all write a lot of Angular code and then you think of the ways that you could make it better and you open lots of feature requests and say, yeah, this is the next great idea, which we really, really love. But because it is an open source project, we get a lot of these and we needed to come up with a solution. That way we could look at these and give them the attention that they deserve and then really maintain the direction of the platform. So let me walk you through what we do now with our new feature request process. So first, when we get a request, it gets actually looked at by somebody on the team. Somebody reviews it, and then when they see it, if it's a feature, we label it as a feature. If not, we call it an issue. If it already aligns with something that's on the future for Angular via our roadmap and our priorities, we will label it as prioritized, right? And if we don't, that is not the end. Okay, this is where things get really interesting. We'll review this issue in 60 days. So you have 60 days from the time that it gets labeled and sorted in our priority list. And then if it doesn't make it to prioritize, it's going to stay open for 60 days. And in that 60 days, that is time for you, the community, to vote on this feature using the thumbs up feature in GitHub. So by voting, you get to shape what happens next. So if you don't receive the number of votes that you need, as like I said in Hamilton, you don't have the votes. If you don't get the votes here, what ends up happening is that we'll end up closing that issue. But if you do get the votes, we review it and then we try to label it as prioritized. If you get the votes and then we review it and it still isn't a good fit, then we're going to close that issue. But that doesn't have to be the end there, because we'll also give you some feedback on why we closed it. And sometimes it's going to turn out that features just aren't a great fit to be directly integrated into the platform, but could be a great fit for you fantastic folks in the community to go ahead and build it and then have it as a third-party package, which people can still get to include and enjoy. So I've shown you lots of love in the community, talked about how much I really enjoy being here. We talked about our feature requests and ways that you can contribute. Now let's talk just a little bit about the future of Angular. So, excuse me, not future, sorry, what's new in version 12? We got nullish coalescing, so you can reduce some of those complex ternary operations in your templates, and you can really clean up some of that code. You could take something really complex like this, right? And then you could turn it into something like this. Now, I get this comment quite a bit. People say, well, calculate age, you shouldn't call functions in your templates. I know, this is just for example, okay? So this is not an official endorsement of that practice. Then we have inline Sass. That's really exciting because I know in your heart of hearts, you've been dying to get closer to what? Single file components. But let me encourage you. Use this great power with lots of wisdom and responsibility. We don't want you to write these massive 60, 80 line, components where the 80 lines of styles just so you can get into one file. Use your best practices and best judgment here. So when you want to do inline Sass, the best thing to do is if you have a small amount of Sass, then go ahead and inline it. But if it's a large amount or more complex, keep it separated. So this is what it looks like. It's going to be in your add component decorator. You'll be able to add in some inline Sass. I know, pretty cool. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. I like that one. How many times have you rolled your eyes in frustration when you typed ng build and you wanted a production build, and then we, the good people at the Angular team, gave you a development build? We get it. We get it. So here's what we've done. We've updated, for new projects, you're going to be able to use ng build and get production by default. Now, existing projects, you will have to do a little bit of a migration step that you can find some documentation on our site, but you're going to have ng build do production by default. All right. So if you want to migrate existing, screenshot this. All right. And it's also online, but this is what you do to migrate your existing project. Strict mode, catch your bugs early. This is really going to help you. I know it's going to be annoying that you're going to have to make updates to your projects, but this will help you in the long run. If you want to understand more about how that works and what some of the benefits are, why don't you head over to goo.gle/angular-enabling-best-practices, and you'll be able to get a beautiful article written by our very own Miko Getchev, who talks all about this. Some more quick updates. Webpack 5, production ready. Feels good, feels great. How are you? All right, TypeScript, we went up. Where? Version 4.2. The Ivy-based language service is enabled by default when you're using Visual Studio Code. And this is super dope because it's a great segue into what we're going to be talking about next, which is Ivy. All right, so Ivy is really the backbone of how we're going to take Angular forward in the future and all the amazing things that we could do. We got things like feature parity in terms of the feedback that you got for your code and your templates with the Ivy-based language service because of Ivy. When we were using View Engine, we couldn't get that same fidelity, right? Because Ivy is unlocking a lot of stuff for us. So we're moving toward Ivy everywhere. And to get there, a lot of things have to change. One, View Engine is deprecated. That one's gone, all right? So it's still, your libraries that work with View Engine, we're still using ngCC to create that version of the library that still works with the Ivy. But if you are a library maintainer and you're watching this right now, the best thing to do is to start to migrate your projects over to Ivy now, because View Engine, when it's removed, you won't have any options at that point because it will be removed in a future version because, again, Ivy everywhere is our goal. Here's how you can find out some more information, goo.gle/improving library distribution. Go ahead, check that out for some more details. So in my closing verse, friends, let's just talk a little bit about the future of Angular. So in Q2, well, before I even say that, let's make sure that we all know about the roadmap. We have our roadmap. Let me tell you about the things that we've been doing on our roadmap because we're doing our best to remain transparent with the efforts that we're undertaking, and we're also following through on those efforts. Angular DevTools was released. You folks are using it and loving it, and we love you. Thank you. We streamlined our release process, so we're really aiming for smoother releases overall for Angular. So we've done some work there. We worked with the Chrome team to get the Trusted Types API involved so you can have more secure apps. We've tried our best to do optimizations around build speeds and bundle sizes, so you may see some improvements there. And so this is all the stuff that we knocked out in Q2, and plus some other small things, but this is some really great stuff. I'm really proud of the work the team is doing. So let's talk about from the roadmap what's happening. So we're deprecating and removing support for IE11. So that's happening. That's going to be gone. We're exploring ES 2017 as a default output language. So we all know that as the JavaScript spec continues to grow, there are really cool and expressive ways to write code. Well, we want to leverage as much of that as we can. So we're working on this. We're exploring how to make this happen. test times and debugging. So that's hard, right? Because when you're working with your tests and things are slow or just more complex, we're working on improving those times. We're doing what we can there. So that's something that's the team's working on. We're also publishing some advanced guides, so things like change detection and in Zone.js, like things like that. We know that you're asking for it, so we're working on delivering that for you. And yes, this is true. We're exploring optional ng modules. Do not ask me when it's coming out. I don't know. We're looking at what a module, optional module world looks like. But we are exploring this, and this is all on the roadmap. So if you want to keep track of these initiatives, definitely check out the roadmap on angular.io. All right, friends. Well, that is it for me. But here's what I encourage you to do. Continue to be excellent to each other, because we're going to go so far as long as we go together. And until the next time we get to meet, go build great apps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Ben, are you ready to follow that? It's a hard act to follow, isn't it?
No, I actually started filling out my resume while that was going on. So I don't know how I could lose my job from having to follow him, but it seems like it's possible. So I just, as a blanket, filled out my resume.
But like, don't you feel pumped? Don't you feel like you just drank like some coffee? I do.
During that. And this is boo, but I work on React stuff now because it's my new job. That's what I do. And I miss the Angular tooling. Like, I see announcements about that, and I'm like, oh, I do kind of miss having that nice, I do. All right. Well, I have announcements about RxJS.
Are you going to share slides?
I'm not sharing slides. I'm not as well prepared as Mr. Thompson, but a lot of it. The last time I shared slides about this, Tracy got after me because it took way over the 15 minutes. I don't want to do that. I gave a 2-hour, almost like an hour and a half, 2-hour long talk on RxJS 7 at RxJS Live Asia. It's on YouTube. I'll try to link that here after I'm done. Or Tracy, it looks like she's trying to dig it up. That goes over like what's in RxJS 7 in detail. But RxJS 7.2 is out. The biggest thing that you need to know right now is Angular is shipping with RxJS version 6, which the latest version of that is 6.6.7. By all accounts, upgrading a new Angular app, if you've got an Angular app that you just put out, or like a newish up-to-date Angular app, to the latest version of RxJS 7 does work. You should be okay with that. It requires TypeScript 4.2. But we're going to get with that. The biggest thing that you're going to get with that is, amongst other things, the bundle size. The actual footprint of RxJS in your app will be about half of what it was before, and at no compromise to speed. In fact, it's a little faster in many cases. RxJS 7, we went through great lengths for a very long time, more than a year, trying to get types proper. So you'll have a lot better type inference. When you do go to migrate to version 7, a lot of the errors that you're going to experience are in places where you have explicitly typed things to try to get stuff to work because our typings weren't working for you. With TypeScript 4.2, we've been able to get almost everything typing very, very well. So that if you do go to migrate and you experience any problems, most of the time, all you need to do is remove your own explicit typings and things will just work. So that's I want to stress that it's probably a good idea to attempt to update your code base just to see what happens. If it's a huge amount of work, then take a step back. But it's something that we've been working on. It's actually Google internally has been using RxJS 7 for quite some time, like a very long time. And other things that are coming out of this, there's new and improved APIs. So instead of having 12 different operators for multicasting, they all still exist. We didn't remove anything. There's some of them are deprecated, but you can do just about everything with share now, which is configurable. You can tell it what type of subject to use and when you want the subject to be reset, and it's very explicit. So that's an exciting bit that's in version 7. as of version 7.2, which was released just a few weeks ago, you can actually import all of your operators from RxJS, not from RxJS/operators. That still exists. We didn't get rid of it. Again, that would be a breaking change. We didn't want to break anybody. But going forward, we've kind of moved to everything top level for RxJS. So that's going to be a big deal. Other upcoming things, we've got, there's improvements to the retry operator. So there's new features. This is actually in a PR that hasn't landed yet, but it'll be out in the next version of RxJS, where you can configure retry to happen on a delay, or do like a little bit easier retry when, where you can actually provide a function and get that going. Actually, I might even be able to show that pull request right now by sharing my screen. But yeah, there's a lot of really good things. Yeah, I'm gonna just to show the example of that really quick. And share screen. So right here. So this is one of the things that's coming up here very, very soon. We've got the ability to add a delay to retry, and also pass a function to that delay that gives you the error, your retry count, and then allows you to return any observable or promise there that when it notifies will retry. So it's a little bit more of a direct retry when. It still has the reset on success bit, which isn't shown in this example, but that already existed in retry. So that's coming up, and it'll enable this kind of exponential step off. We're even talking about potentially providing a function that can just return this object for you that you can pass in, but it's just going to be a lot easier to use. Other things we've got coming up here, this is a new feature a lot of people are excited about, which is the ability to actually get events from tap for when you subscribe, when you unsubscribe. So that means it didn't complete, it didn't error, somebody unsubscribed from it. You can actually get a notification for that. And then of course we added finalize as well, just to kind of round things out. So you can do pretty much everything from within tap. That does not mean we're getting rid of the finalize operator, but this is just a different way to get kind of life cycle events, if you will, from the observable itself, because it's a really common ask that people have. So that'll be coming in the next version of RxJS as well. So the important bit, though, is that you do get updated to TypeScript 4.2 before you attempt to use RxJS 7, and that you make sure that Angular is up to date. And once you update that, do look at your bundle size before and after. Look at the footprint of what RxJS, how much RxJS is taking in your bundle size, because that's going to be a really interesting bit for you. That you should be able to reduce things. The former, if you included everything from RxJS 6, and I mean the whole kitchen sink, everything, you were looking at about, I think, 97 kilobytes. So that's a lot to include the entire library. Now, if you include everything, and again, this is more than anyone would include in an Angular app, especially because it also includes like our Ajax helpers and some other things, you're looking at about 54 kilobytes. So, and that's even with new features added, that sort of thing. Certain things you might run into when updating, we've improved the types for subjects. So a long time ago, we wrote subjects against TypeScript 1.8 is when this started. So we weren't able to make it so you could just pass nothing to next on a subject void. Like you had to pass undefined, and it was decided that was rather unergonomic. So subject was incorrectly typed for a long time, and even in version 6, you can pass no argument to next, and it will just work even if you have a subjective number. That's not the case anymore. Now, if you want to pass no argument to a subject next, you actually have to have it typed to be a subject of void or a subject of number or void or something like that. So it'll allow that. Other things, toPromise was never typed properly in any version of a previous version of RxJS, where toPromise was like, oh, we're returning a promise of T. And the truth is, if your observable never emits a value, it will also return a promise of undefined. So now it returns a promise of T or undefined, and we've also deprecated toPromise. And the reason for deprecating toPromise is we've provided two new tree shakeable functions that do what toPromise does for you, only better. There is first value from and last value from, and you can configure what they do if they don't if your observable does not emit at least one value. And if you don't configure it, it will reject the promise because you didn't get a value, which is an important distinction that people need to have about promises. I still don't recommend using any of these things if you're really into the observable side, but sometimes you need to, because you're dealing with async await, or you're dealing with some older promise-based API, but they're there. And I know that a lot of people with older Angular apps, the Angular documentation themselves used to tell people to use toPromise. So there are some people that will run into issues around that when they try to update. And I just wanted you to know about that right off. But please do try the new version of RxJS. We've put in a lot of work to make things a lot smaller, and watch the YouTube video, because there is just an absolute ton of information of things that have happened over the last 2 years of development on RxJS 7. So stuff to look at. But again, we didn't remove anything. We've deprecated an awful lot of stuff that will get removed later in the roadmap for RxJS 8. RxJS 8, just as a preliminary, I already went through and just to see what would happen, removed all of the deprecated stuff. And the way we test this, by the way, is actually running it in Angular CLI production builds to see what the size is. So it's another about 25% smaller after we remove deprecated APIs for version 8. So there's a lot of size savings and speed and performance improvements and stuff coming down the road. And we're trying to get rid of APIs that don't make sense, or try to get them to make a little bit more sense and be a little bit more self-documented in your code as time goes on. So just to kind of improve the ergonomics for what you're doing. So that's the update for RxJS.
Awesome. Were you like reading notes, or you just like have it memorized?
I was winging it.
Well, it was fantastic. Thank you. Although it was less than 15 minutes, so.
Sorry, I can go more.
I'm just gonna like constantly give you crap about everything. No, it's totally fine. Thank you. Send me the link, by the way. I did not find the link, so if you post in the private chat, I will go ahead and post it. Okay, so last but not least, on your hopefully West Coast, I was going to say Pacific Coast. I guess it is called the Pacific Coast, right? Have you guys ever heard that? The Pacific Coast? No, it's just me? Okay. Maybe it's not called the Pacific Coast. I don't know. Where is my Chrome tab? There it is. Okay. So I'm going to talk about contributing to open source. And Mark's heard this talk before, but Ben hasn't. So Ben, you can tell me like all the things I'm saying absolutely wrong. I'm ready. I'm ready for your well actually comments. You ready to give them to me?
I am not well actuallying anything.
Because it's perfect. Let's just be honest. Okay. So anyways, my name is Tracy again. You can follow me on Twitter. Today we're going to talk about how to contribute to open source, right? I get this question a lot. How can I contribute? How can I be an open source contributor, right? And it's a fun question to answer. The great thing about this is it's actually really, really easy, and there's a lot of ways to do so. Just submit like as many PRs as possible to RxJS, and then Ben will just give up one day and just like hand over the reins, right?
That sounds right.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
That's how it works.
So this is just going to be like a really quick start guide. And hopefully you all learn a little bit of something. Like I said before, you can follow me on Twitter at LadyElite. I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm the CEO of a company called This.Labs, which I absolutely love. We're a 50% consultancy, and it's just amazing what we get to do within the JavaScript community. I'm on the RxJS core team, GDE for Angular, Microsoft MVP. And I do tons of other community stuff because, again, I just love community and bringing, the community together. Back to my day job, we love our clients. We get to do some really cool things like work on with Twilio, Google, Roblox, Wikimedia, T-Mobile, Microsoft. I mean, it's just, it's a fun place. I mean, it's obviously work, but, work can be fun as well. And we are hiring. So if you love Angular, we're definitely looking for Angular developers, engineering managers, architects, etc. And obviously we work on like tons of other different technologies. So, even if you just want to come hang out, like email me, I'm always willing to have a little chat. So let's get back to this question, and I'm going to give you kind of like a path today. So I'm going to talk about my journey a little bit. Then we're going to talk about like the why and the how, like your why and your how. And then we'll go over like some do's and don'ts to consider when starting your journey as well. Okay. Yes, it is censored and I do have to post it. So Mark, post it in the private chat and then I'll post it after this. So let's go ahead and start off with my journey. So how did I get started in open source? Well, I was going to boot camp, a JavaScript boot camp, and I loved it. I loved meeting the JavaScript community. And as you know, I'm on the RxJS core team, a GDE, right? And a Microsoft MVP. So how did I do this? Well, the first thing I did was I joined the community. So I found Twitter. I started talking to people. I started bugging Ben. I was like, Ben, what's this RxJS thing? I heard it's so cool. Like, teach it to me, right? Specifically with Angular, I started like figuring out who was talking about Angular, who was excited, who was speaking at Angular conferences, what were the conferences that were going on, and I really got to know the community. And then what I ended up doing is I started sharing and educating people on my experience, right? Like I blogged about everything I learned, helped where I could online. This helped the community understand that I was interested, and I was able to give back in my own way, even as a beginner. So I became a valued member of the community. Then I decided, and this is, what you should do is you should meet maintainers. So meeting people, getting them to know who you are is important, right? I met open source maintainers. I developed relationships online at meetups, at conferences. If you're just like nice, friendly, and helpful, the rest will come, right? And then I finally got to contribute. So I always knew I wanted to give back more. I was always looking for like, who needs help? Ben and I have been best friends for a while. Jay Phelps, our other friend, he was like on the RxJS core team too. I saw where they needed some help struggling with the documentation. So do you remember when I was doing that, Ben? I was like, I could probably help with this.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just like volunteered to gather a docs team together and get a jump start. I created a repo and it worked. It was awesome to see like this team come together, right? And I didn't have to do much to kind of like wrangle them, but I was able to use my skills of what I was good at to like jumpstart this initiative. And then shortly after I started spending a lot of time on it, I was like, became officially a part of the RxJS core team. One thing to note though is if you start contributing, definitely like don't expect to like become a part of the core team immediately. That's really not the point, right? The point is really like be helpful, contribute, and if you want that reward or curse, is it a course or a reward, Ben? I know we talk about this a lot. This is like the pre-conversation. To become part of the core team, someday maybe you'll get that, but don't go in expecting it because again, it's like disingenuous. So that's my journey. I want to talk about a little bit about like the why and the how as well, right? So when you think about why you're doing this, right, you can actually be, contributing to open source because of a functional reason or an aspirational reason. And both these paths are totally awesome. So functional is like, hey, I use Angular maybe at work or RxJS at work, and I'm working on a project and I need to figure out something that's not working and something needs to be fixed within open source, and it just needs to work because otherwise my application isn't going to get deployed. Okay, so that I would consider functional. And then, open source is a great way to build a career. Tons of conversation. We can have tons of conversations about that. Getting new jobs, increasing your knowledge within a technology. This is a very aspirational thing. And both paths are totally amazing, but like how you approach it is actually, a little bit different. And they kind of overlap and help each other. So I think when you're talking about functional, right, like give before you ask. That's the first thing. Your life is going to be 10 times easier and you'll get 10 times the result if you're already a contributor or like they already know you, right? So if you can, always try to give and contribute before you have an ask. I'm sure like Ben and Mark have both seen this where it's like, here's this like 300 page, 300 line PR, merge it, right? And Ben, you probably look at that, you're like, who the hell are you? I'm exhausted. I can't deal with this right now, right? Versus like, if I did that, he'd be like, Tracy's cool, merge into master, done, right, Ben?
Yeah, I would just merge anything that you submit.
Anything. Really. Exactly. It's amazing. So highly recommend, again, give before you ask. Okay, so if you also really want something to change for a reason, this is whether it's a big functionality, a small change, whatever, ask for feedback first. Not like me, because I'll just submit a PR and expect Ben to merge it. But make sure to submit an issue. Find a maintainer to champion your issue, right? Maintainers are super busy, and it's so much easier if they know you and they know you're going to do good work, right? You also want to submit an issue because there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors. You might really, really, really want a feature, but like maybe the core team has already talked about it and said, we're not going to do this for X, Y, and Z reason. And you just don't see that because those conversations aren't public, right? Or maybe the work is already being privately worked on or already planned, and you just don't want to waste your time if it's not going to be merged, right? So just take those things into consideration. And, even though you're going to do something amazing, like it might not be the right thing. I think another thing is finding maintainers in other forums. So try to build relationships and reach out to maintainers, Twitter, via email, if you need a response. If you get Ben's address, show up at his house, it'll be fine. Send them a nice personal message about your question. It's a really, great way to get an answer because, Ben, do you look at your GitHub notifications? Mark, do you?
I look at them, but they're usually a train wreck. So
yeah, exactly.
Whether or not I get any solid signal out of it is debatable.
Yeah. So, but okay, here's another thing. Contact people, build relationships, right? Again, make them genuine, but don't get impatient or feel entitled to a response. Everyone's busy. You're not their top priority. You might be more of a top priority if they already know you or you've contributed to the repo in the past. Like me, for example, who, Ben will just blind merge my code and it's totally fine. It's always fine. It's perfect. So the last step, and I kind of talked about this idea of building genuine relationships. Nobody likes to be used or feel like they're in a relationship where like you're only trying to self-serve your needs and you're using them for a reason, right? Like, so be genuine and remember that open source is a lot of doing good for the community and, not to serve the needs of, yourself. Aspirational. I really like this one because it's much more flexible. You can kind of like do what you want to do, right? Versus functional, it's like you can't really like say like, I guess you could say like, screw Angular, I'm never using it again. But like typically at work, that's not usually the case, right? When you're aspirational, you can like do whatever you want, usually. But like, just remember again, like if you're pushing your own agenda and just doing it for like, I don't know, one reason, like people aren't going to probably want to support you on that. So the first thing you want to do is ask yourself, can I be successful? Do I like this team? So when you look at a project, look at the issues and, figure it out. Like, are there issues I can tackle? Have I used this library? Is there documentation I can help with? Is there something else I can help with? I think the next thing to ask yourself is, do I like this team? So look at the PRs, look at the responses to the issues, look at the RFCs. Do I like these people? Can I see myself working with them? If it's a no, then go find something else. There's like tons of teams and cultures out there, and you will definitely find your fit. The next thing to do is make sure, when you're thinking about problems that you think are relevant within a project, they might not actually be the problems that the core team wants you to work on. So make sure you understand the problems that the core team wants to work on and feels like needs to be solved and work on those first. There should be plenty of issues marked as like good first issue or looking for help within a repo. And before you start working on an issue, it's also really good to like comment and say like, hey, is anybody working on this? And then once you hear back, go ahead and start contributing. I've had plenty of people, like there is this one person who wanted to contribute to RxJS, and they were like, hey, this has been sitting for about 2 weeks. Like nobody's looked at it. And, I just like pinged Ben, I think I pinged you. And then Ben got back to them, right? So, like it's really good to, again, just like comment and find people and build relationships that way because it'll help you get better results, right? Other thing is help with the docs. So many people started with the docs. Like you listen to these podcasts of these open source maintainers you probably look up to. They always start with the docs. Docs always need help. Ben will say this too, right? Do we need help with the docs? Yes. So like literally 90% of people will say, I need help with the docs. So if you're using documentation actively, you're probably going to find holes, right? So, whether that's live examples, wording, better explanations, these are all things that you can help with. And, probably the last thing you want to do, especially in the aspirational space, is make sure you're educating and sharing your experience. Like write blog posts about your experience. What do you love? How to use certain features? What are some upcoming features? What are challenges? There's this one guy who runs Angular. I can't remember if it's Angular Melbourne or Angular Sydney. And it's so funny because every single Angular meetup, Mark, you get such a kick out of this. He's like, let's look through the Angular repo and figure out what they're talking about so that we can make assumptions about what features might be coming next. And it's just like the funnest thing at a meetup. The last 10 minutes of a meetup is that. And I just love it. But I'm like, dang, this guy should just blog about what he's doing and the things that he's thinking about, because it's really fun to see how his head works. Also remember that when you're talking about being aspirational and open source, you don't necessarily have to contribute directly to a project repo to be useful and to be relevant within a community. Any and all education is super helpful and always wanted. Quick do's and don'ts. Ben, are you going to like this slide? I think you're going to like this slide. I was thinking about you when I wrote this slide. You're either thinking, uh-oh, or...
I mean, it starts off pretty good. I'll have to read through it. Run us through it and we'll see.
So I think the do's are number one, have compassion. Maintainers are usually working for free on nights and weekends. Right, Ben?
Yes. That is 100% true.
Treat maintainers like people. Remember that maintainers are just as human as you are, and they can only handle so many things at one time. If you treat them like crap, they're not going to care about you. Be professional. If open source is not your job, it's not what you get paid for. You can't be fired from it. Well, I guess you could be fired from it, but not monetarily fired for it, I guess. So even though you're not necessarily required to be professional, everybody is working within a professional environment, and you should have professional etiquette. And nobody likes to deal with people that don't respect each other. So that's that. Assume the best of intentions. If you go into a project and you're like, why is this code like this? You're not using TypeScript, or you are using TypeScript. Everything sucks, right? Nobody's going to give you the time of day because nobody cares about your opinion, right? And also code is code, right? Any code base you look at, always assume the best of intentions, especially when approaching open source maintainers, because it's tireless, it's often thankless to keep everyone happy. Also, code of conduct. Treat people like you want to be treated. Make sure you're abiding by the code of conduct that the project has. And if the project doesn't have a code of conduct, make sure you're just being nice, like Ken Dodd says. Okay, don'ts. Don't be or act entitled. Also, don't think you're the biggest priority for a maintainer. We all know that Ben's biggest priority is me, not his 3 kids. It's me. My code is the most important. I'm kidding. But, usually maintainers have a full-time job, plus they have a full-time job in open source, plus they have children, plus they might have me to deal with. So imagine having to juggle a million things like that. It's a lot. Also, don't be annoying. Just don't be annoying. Don't email about an issue 10 times a day. Follow up, but follow up within reason. And then don't complain, right? Everybody's trying their best. And sometimes you might not understand why a decision is being made, but it's because you're not in those closed door conversations that might be happening, right? Complaining about something you're getting for free is not the nicest way to approach open source. And a lot of people will say, if you don't like it, go use a different library. Fork it. Right, Ben? Right, Mark?
Yeah.
I mean, don't really fork it.
Yeah, it'll work out great. Just fork it. It's fine.
So I hope this talk was useful. If you have any questions about my journey, I'm always happy to talk. But again, hopefully you understand how easy and simple it is to get into open source. I think one of the reasons why I've seen success in my career in open source is mainly because I just wanted to get in there and play. I wanted to get in there and help. I wanted to get in there and just like solve problems. I love solving problems, right? I wasn't like trying specifically to like do something. I just ended up somewhere. So, I mean, you should have a path where you try to end up. Maybe that was like my mistake, but generally like, right, like people are people, and, you know, open source is amazing. Angular community is amazing. RxJS community is amazing because people are genuine and just like awesome and are awesome to each other. Also help with the docs. Please help with the docs if you have time. And I hope to see more people making contributions into the community. Last slide is just a reminder that we're hiring. Again, we have like amazing developers. We're 100% remote, fully worldwide, and I love talking to developers. So you can always email me, come hang out, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Wait, does Pikachu actually work at your company? That one slide had Pikachu.
Yes, actually, there's this thing called a snap cam, and apparently, I don't know which Pikachu you saw, but like there's this one Pikachu where it just like colors in your whole body. Like it looks like somebody took like a yellow pen to your body. It was really funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. I mean, Mark has seen my like this talk before, but like, Ben, what did you think of my talk?
I loved it. I was going to add one more thing that a lot of people don't think about when they're not maintaining. So like big projects like Angular and whatever, and React and Angular, they have paid employees that work on it. They have plenty of like engineering hours to review code and whatever. A lot of smaller projects, RxJS included, we have a hard time getting people to review PRs. Right. Like, so like we're not doing too bad because we have a core group of people and we kind of take it, and we don't have RxJS doesn't have a whole ton of PRs that come through. But if you have a small project, like say I have the symbol observable repo or something like that, I actually sometimes don't have time to get to review PRs for certain things. And a lot of open source projects out there just have one maintainer, maybe two maintainers. One of the maintainers goes on vacation, PRs don't get reviewed for whatever, especially if you're the maintainer putting out a PR, what am I going to do? Review my own PR? That doesn't make any sense. Like I can to some degree, but at the end of the day, if you want to help maintain a quality project with somebody else, like it's less often that they need your code and more often that they actually need your eyes on like their PRs to help them not make mistakes. So
also helping, like going through repos and maybe like helping review PRs as a way to also understand the code base.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Honestly, like another way to think about it is if you're a developer, think of the thing that you like to do the least about your job. And I guarantee if you contribute that thing to an open source project, you will be so appreciated. Be it
like documentation,
code reviews, those sorts of things, because those are the things that nobody really enjoys doing, but need to get done.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome feedback. Mark, were you going to say something?
No, I just enjoy writing docs.
You're like, wait a second,
nobody enjoys doing it.
I love it.
Yeah. But I think I enjoy writing docs because I really love teaching, and I see that as a form of teaching people. So like for me personally, I think it's a little bit of a unique use case.
That's why they need you on the team, though. Like everybody needs different types of team members, you know? Yeah, diversity, baby.
You got it.
Okay, everybody. Well, I hope you all had fun at this, special AngularMTV, GDG SV, Modern Web meetup. We totally had a ton of fun with y'all. Hope to see you back in person at some point in time soon, although looks like it might be another year or so, sadly. But yeah, and then also if you're watching this from somewhere else and you want Angular World Tour to come to your city, right? This is really for local communities. Then, check out AngularWorldTour.com. There's a link there to say like, hey, come to my city. And you'll see, we have like the rest of the year planned out. So you'll see all the different events where we're speaking, and, most of the talks will be pretty much the same. But obviously like Angular updates will be updated when Angular is updated. RxJS will be updated. There's other speakers too that are joining us for the world tour. So yeah. Any last words?
You all are amazing. Thank you for coming to hang out with us today.
Yes, thank you. And we'll see you next time.
It's a lot of fun. Thanks.